The Accountant is a 2016, what would we say, action thriller to some degree, starring a really stellar cast. You've got Ben Affleck, Anna Kendrick, J.K. Simmons, John Bernthal, Jeffrey Tambor, John Lithgow, and a variety of other great performances. It really is a strong cast, and in effect, in this movie, you've got Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and the Punisher, all in the same movie. So, what was the film like? Did I enjoy it? Well, this is a film that I was really looking forward to, but at the same time, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I am a fan of Ben Affleck's work from a creative point of view, more so than from an acting point of view. The problem that I have with Ben Affleck, be it in Daredevil, Batman, or Argo, or any other film that he's been in, is that I don't really see the character. I just see Ben Affleck dressed as whatever. And that's been an issue for me. I don't think he's a bad actor, I just always have trouble seeing him as a character rather than just himself. And that's an issue with some other characters as well, but in particular with regard to this review, Ben Affleck. In this film, for me personally, this is Ben Affleck's best performance. It's my favourite of his performances and probably my favourite movie to date that he's been in. The Accountant, without spoiling anything, is, as I said, an action thriller, and some people are saying that this could be to Ben Affleck what Jason Bourne was to Matt Damon. And to some degree, I would kind of agree with that. Is this like a Bourne film, though? No, not at all. This is much, much more of a thinking person's film than I was expecting it to be. I wanted to like the film, and there were very specific things that I wanted from the film. It gave me those things, but it gave me more things, not only that I wanted, but also that I didn't know that I wanted. And although this film is, for reasons that are really unknown to me, receiving mixed critical response, great. I loved this film. In fact, this is, so far, my favourite movie of the year. And yes, I've seen every Marvel and DC film to come out this year, and I enjoyed them. I love superhero films, I love comic book films in general, but I like this more easily than any of them. Now, many other people, in fact, most other people, probably won't feel that same way. So why is that the case? Well, to be honest, I don't understand. I don't see why people wouldn't like this. There's really nothing to dislike that I could see. It's a very thoughtful approach on the action thriller. Now, again, and as always, without spoiling anything plot-wise specifically, this is a movie about, spoiler alert, an accountant, of course, played by Ben Affleck, who is also a dangerous person. He has intrigue surrounding him. What does he really do? Yes, he's an accountant, but there's more to him than that. And you can tell all of this, of course, from the trailers. This is a character who has some mental issues. Some would say disabilities. Others would say gifts. And I would err more to the second of those. Because in this film, he's definitely a gifted individual. He has issues, of course, scenarios, for instance, where he would feel awkward, where most people may not. But it was actually that aspect of Ben Affleck's character in The Accountant that I enjoyed the most. It's not really difficult to play a badass. Plenty of people have done it, before and after Jason Bourne. Some do stand out more. You've got your Equalizers, your Jason Bournes, your John Wicks, and they really do stand out. The difference with this film is it goes into the mind of someone like that much more. Now, usually, you don't really care what the thought process of a badass movie character is. You just want to see him shoot stuff. And that's fair enough. And that may just be the reason why some people are having an issue with this film. Maybe they've gone into it expecting pure action, like a John Wick, an Equalizer, a Bourne, and that's not what you get. You get great action, but unlike Bourne or John Wick, etc., it's not non-stop. Most of those films have a somewhat rushed early section, which is basically just to introduce you to the character and make you like the guy, but it almost sometimes feels like an excuse to just get to the action. And that's fair enough. That's what you want from those films. With this film, that's not the case. With this film, it goes more into why he is the way he is. And I like that. And that's not something that you'd necessarily expect going into it. And for those who don't want that, that could be the reason why they don't like this film as much. And that's fair enough, but I think that those people are missing out, because this is a film which I can appreciate. I don't personally have the mental issues that the character has in the film, but I can still relate to aspects of his personality, the way his mind works, and some other characters in the film as well, who don't necessarily have mental issues, but are just very real-feeling people. Everyone in the film, to some degree, is flawed in some way. And usually action thrillers don't really go that deep into characters. They're just people who will or won't die. In this film, they go deep, and I enjoyed that. I also loved the fact that Ben Affleck's performance as this character who has autism is restrained. It's very easy to think of playing a character with what some would call mental issues and going over the top. Not necessarily with ridiculous gestures or mannerisms, but it's just easy to go over the top if you don't have those issues. But Ben Affleck gave it a very thoughtful performance. It's understated, but at the same time very clear that he has these issues. And I loved the way he portrayed that. There is also a lot of moment-based comedy. It's not a comedy film, and it doesn't try to be overly funny. It just finds the humour in situations which doesn't necessarily have moments where you would normally find humour, but the characters, were they in those scenarios, would probably respond in a humorous way to cope with the situation. And I like that as well. I love all of the characters in this film, be it main characters, side characters, or just people in it to die. They're all great. There was not, as far as I could tell, a single bad performance in the film. So overall, I absolutely love this movie. It was by far, so far, my favourite movie of the year, and it's one of my favourite films so far, ever. And for many other people, that definitely won't be the case. But for me, I loved how much deeper into the psyche of a stereotypical badass this movie went. So, what about our individual ratings? Well, first of all, we have the story and the plot. And for the story and plot, I'm going to give the film a very generous 8. Many other people I know would not rate it that highly. And I can understand why, because that's not necessarily what you want. You don't want an overly thoughtful film in this genre. But I love that they did that. And it's completely unapologetic about that. It also, incidentally, without spoiling anything, has one of the best romantic relationships I've ever seen in any film. I absolutely loved it, and that's coming from someone who usually could not care less about the emotional connections of people in films. So, in that regard, I'm giving it a very generous, but in my opinion, very well deserved 8. As far as the characters and their motivations, well, again, I'm going to be even more generous, and some people may not agree with this, but for me, it's a 10. The characters are all fantastic. They chose superb actors all round to play all of the roles in supporting and primary roles, and they all just give it their best. Some of them are understated, some are subdued, some are emotional, but I love them all. And that very rarely happens for me in movies. So overall, I'm giving it in that regard an unapologetic 10. As far as the visuals, the look of the film, the special effects, etc., I'm going to give it a 7. And the reason why is because, as I said, the action is great when it is there. But it's not non-stop action. This is certainly no Judge Dredd, it's no John Wick, etc. And that is unfortunately what many people probably want from the film. But when the action is used, it's good. It's just not necessarily as frequent as you might like. And the look of the film overall isn't trying to be amazing. It's trying to look real, and it does a good job of that. But the inherent nature of looking real is that it doesn't look as exciting. So visually, I like what they did with the film. It's got an understated, efficient look to it, and being about an accountant with the mental abilities that he has, that's very appropriate to the film. Overall, as I said, it's a 7 from me. As far as the audio, the soundtrack, etc. of the film, I'm going to give it a 6, because although I enjoyed the music, it's not overly memorable, it doesn't stand out a huge amount, it just does the job of movie music. It gets you in the moment, it's uplifting when it needs to be, it's not when it doesn't. It just does the job. It's certainly above a baseline of 5, but at the same time, not phenomenal or overly memorable. So it's a 6 from me. And finally, for the rewatchability and the entertainment factor, well, if it's not obvious by now, yeah, I'm giving it a 10. Because for me personally, I've already watched this film a couple of times in cinemas. I plan on watching it again at home. I love every minute of this film. Every moment, character, scene was perfect for me. There's nothing I would have changed about this film. Nothing at all. And that is very rare for me. Other people definitely won't feel that way, but for me personally, which is what it comes down to in this review, I've got to give it a 10, because I absolutely loved it. And overall, that means that The Accountant, as a tabulation of the 5 categories put together, achieves a very respectable score of 4.1 out of 5. And I would, of course, love to give it a perfect rating of 5 out of 5 if it was my personal opinion. But, as always, I try to be as objective as possible in everything except, basically, the rewatchability and entertainment. So overall, it's a 4.1 from me. And it pretty much goes without saying that if you are a fan of action films, but more so thoughtful action, or thoughtful thrillers with elements of action, then I think you'll enjoy this. It's a thoughtful film within a genre which usually doesn't have too much thought. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.